All right. So, first off, thanks for being willing to do the interview.
Yeah, of course. Happy to
Cool.
help.
Thanks. So, yeah, if you can, how about if we start off with you describing what you do now, and
hmm
then we'll take a walk down memory lane to what you used to do.
Okay, yeah, sure. So my name's Cara Wry. I am an HR business partner, and I work at Lonza Biologics in Portsmouth. So we are a pharmaceutical manufacturing company located in Portsmouth. Um, and in terms of my current role, I support one of our manufacturing assets. So we have an asset called 20K. So it's the size of the tank of the product that we create. So it's 20,000 liters. So we have manufacturing operators that work in our 20K asset. So I currently support them relating to basically all HR functions. Um, but really, I work closely with the 20K and Mono leadership team, um, just supporting them with like their headcount, employee development, compensation, any type of employee relations issues, leaves of absence. Um, so yeah, really. And then, I kind of work closely with them, to push down any sort of global HR initiatives that we have, specifically related to like goal setting, individual development plans, calibration sessions, that sort of thing. So working really closely with the leadership, managers, supervisors, asset heads for 20K. I also support lean operations, which is a smaller group, but that encompasses training, our operational excellence team, and site communications.
Awesome. So, what would be an example? So, when you said, I'm looking at my notes
Mhm.
about pushing down like leadership initiatives. Just, just real briefly, could you describe like what would that entail you doing?
Yeah, so from a global perspective, we have a KPI for around getting employees to complete their individual development plans. And so this is a tool in our HR system that is for employees to kind of really map out their development goals for the year. So it's something that we encourage them to do and to have that conversation with their manager. So it's talking about like what do you want to accomplish in your career this year? Is it do you want to stay where you are? Do you want to grow? Do you want to obtain some trainings? Do you want to go to a conference? Those are just some examples of like items that people could put in there. There's also a section to reflect on last year's IDP. And so from the global perspective, they push down to the sites that they want, 100% of employees to complete their IDPs. And so that's something that I'm responsible for getting my groups to complete their IDPs. And so, um, we've held like a lunch and learn session. I keep the SLT, so the site leadership team, updated on the percentages of where employees are, reaching out to employees, providing resources and guidance on completing their IDPs, just being available to ask questions too. So,
Awesome. So, individual development plans.
mhm.
It's cool. Okay, so you help things happen.
Yeah.
All things employee, like
Yep.
how to so employees do their best work, want to come
Yep.
to work, etc. And so now, how about if you describe what your previous career was?
Yeah, sure. So, I went to UNH and majored in political science. I thought I wanted to go to law school, and UNH at the time didn't have a pre-law program, so that was the closest I could get was political science. Um, and realized kind of, I think, senior year that maybe law school wasn't where I wanted to go. And really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I ended up getting an internship through UNH at the State House working for the governor of New Hampshire. And so from there, my career in politics kind of just took off. During my internship, they offered me a full-time role when I graduated, and from there I worked in his office. It was then Governor John Lynch. I worked in his office for 2 years, and then because I was commuting from Portsmouth to Concord, um, and the like the head of the office at Senator Shaheen's office knew that I lived on the seacoast and a position opened in Senator Shaheen's office in her Dover office. And so they kind of recruited me to see if I was interested, and I was. So I moved over to the federal government. So I started working for Senator Shaheen. She's a U.S. Senator. And I started there in 2011. I worked in her constituent services office. So we worked directly with New Hampshire residents who needed assistance with federal agencies. Um, and then was promoted in like 2015 to director. So I oversaw the team of caseworkers or constituent services. That was like a team of 7 or 8, depending on where we were with staffing. And so yeah, so I was there until 2022 through
And
COVID and yeah.
the fun time that was COVID.
Yeah.
So can you describe like what were some of the tasks related to, dealing with constituents and helping them? Like what were some of the tasks involved?
So it was you had to be a really good communicator, really organized. It was working directly with constituents and New Hampshire residents, and then also working with the federal agencies. So each of us kind of specialized in a different, bigger federal issue. So the bigger issues were like immigration, healthcare, veterans issues. So like working with the VA, taxes, and like housing. And so as director, I kind of had to know all of the agencies. And so it took some time, definitely, to understand the intricacies of, the federal government. But, in that role, I was, definitely cases were escalated to me. So it was, speaking with upset constituents who didn't like the resolution. It was briefing the senator on trends that we might be hearing from in the state. So she was aware, and if she needed to escalate things on her end, or if there was an opportunity for legislation or letters for her to address. And then it was yeah, and managing people. I don't know if I said that, but so it was a lot of different things. And it was constantly evolving depending on who is in the administration, what issues were coming up in the world. So obviously COVID was pretty intense, and lots of different pieces of legislation and changes happening very quickly. So it was, you had to really be adaptable and responsive and just ask good questions.
So in terms of strengths and skills,
Hmm.
so strength being adaptable,
Hmm.
um, and being responsive skills, all kinds of like conflict resolution,
Hmm.
dealing with different and difficult
Yeah.
personalities.
Yes.
Um, so how did you then go from that to the profession of HR?
Yeah, so that was definitely it took a while for me to kind of figure out my next steps. I have a young family, and so politics and just working through campaigns and elections and the uncertainty of whether or not, you're going to have a job at the end of November is was just very stressful. And I knew that Senator Shaheen wasn't going to be in office forever. And I knew that I didn't want to be in politics forever. So I kind of was like in my mind, what are my next steps? How can I use the skills I have, which are pretty broad, but the actual job was specific. It's like, how do you go from politics to anything else? So I really had to dig deep into myself and think about what do I like in this job and where can I use those skills and transfer them into another industry and another career. And so I kind of did some research, started thinking about it, saw HR because I like people. I like engaging with people. I like helping people, and started to take some certificate courses at UNH just around HR. Pretty inexpensive, just to see if this was something I was interested in before I decided to make the leap, and really enjoyed the classes. And then from there, I just kind of casually started looking for jobs and like putting my resume out there. And then got found the job at Lonza, which was actually not what I'm doing now. It was an HR services advisor role. So it was more of an entry level HR role, which looking at it and talking to the recruiter and learning about the job, I mean, it was definitely a lateral move for me compensation wise. It was probably, it definitely, was a lower position than being a director of a team. But I knew that I needed to start at the bottom, to kind of work my way up. And I didn't want to keep waiting any longer. So I made the leap. I definitely had a lot of support from my husband and my family. Um, like I'm taking a little bit of a pay cut. It, can we make this work? Like, you know, I'm going into the private industry, which I've never been in before. I've always been in the public. And so there were a lot of changes, a lot of discussions, like a lot of figuring out if, is this the right move? Um, and yeah, that's the that was what went through my mind when I decided to make the change.
Cool. And and then you made the change, and
Yep.
now you're in the private sector in a different career or different
Mhm.
profession. Um, what was hardest about that, and what was surprising?
I think the hardest part was like just getting used to the different systems that I had to like work on and work through. So in HR services, it was kind of the advisors did a lot of like back end work on like, background checks and onboarding. And, we had a ticket system for employees. So it was just like a lot of systems that I had to learn and facilitate for folks. So I think that was definitely hard. And I think I went from like an office where I'd see like the same four people every day in this little office to a site that's like 1,500 employees. So that was a big cultural change for me too. Um, I think it's exactly like what I needed, and wanted and like love about Lonza. So it was definitely the right move. One thing that was surprising for me, honestly, was like how much less stressed I was in this job than my other job. Like not having to manage a team, um, being able to really learn and like not be expected to know everything right away, and just being able to learn and excel and have really great support was just like the best. And that I think was surprising to me, like how much less stressed I was and still am. So,
Oh, cool.
yeah.
Um, what what would you like if you're mentoring somebody who's thinking of changing careers? Like,
Mhm.
what advice would you give them?
I think definitely kind of doing what I did, see if there's like opportunities for you to learn about the career outside of, just online research. Like, are there classes you can take? Are there trainings you can take? I also knew someone that was pretty high up in HR, so I reached out to her and kind of had a nice conversation with her, just learning about her transition. So, networking with people, and like doing research on where you want to go. Like for me, I knew that like working with the public and helping people in my previous career, like I knew I wanted to continue to help people and I wanted to be at a company that was doing something good, even though Lonza, obviously is for profit, but they're manufacturing pharmaceutical ingredients that are going into drugs to help people. And to me, that was important. So like researching companies I wanted to work for that were meaningful to me. Um, and yeah, I mean, connecting with folks that are in the industry if you can. Um, people love to talk about their jobs and themselves. So like nobody, definitely don't be shy to reach out and ask questions. And like, I mean, I think definitely having a lot of support, um, and just figuring out what makes sense for your family too. Like for me, continuing to be able to be hybrid 2 days a week, being at Lonza is, we're in Portsmouth, so we're super close. The commute time was less for me in this job. So like those were just important factors when I made the decision. So it wasn't just the fact that this was a career change, but there were a lot of other positives that I thought about.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned about people love to talk about themselves and their jobs. It's so true
Hmm.
because you think about it, most people don't have the experience of people showing interest in them.
Yeah,
You
right?
know? Yeah. And so your genuine interest, like, oh, this is cool. Yeah, I can't tell you how many people I've interviewed, like for articles, and they're doing me a favor. And I always let them know, like, I always appreciate that. But so often they'll say, man, thank you for interviewing me. This was fun.
Yeah,
And
it is super
yeah.
fun. Like
Yeah.
everybody loves to talk about themselves, so why not? And if
I
you can
love
help someone else, like it's a double win.
You got it. Yeah, I'm glad that's another really good point. Is that's one of the things I try to say to career coaching clients is this may sound weird, but you're really doing them a favor too. I don't
Hmm.
recommend going in with that like an entitled attitude, but to realize it feels good to help people. So them feeling good about helping you on your career journey, that's a good thing for them too. So yeah.
Yeah, and like here at Lonza, I mean, I'm in after I spent a year in the advisor role and then was promoted to the business partner role. And for me, that I've actually done some interviews with folks at Lonza about this because it's not often that they have that happen. I think there's only two of us that have been globally that have been promoted from advisor to business partner. And for me, it was like having a good HR team on site that mentored me and took an interest in my growth. And so I could learn from them and show my interest and help them and support them. And then I also took part in a mentorship program at Lonza. So I was the mentee and I was mentored by somebody in HR at our VISP site, and just taking advantage of any opportunities, that your company or, uh, outside networking that's available is like it was huge. I mean, my mentor was super great, very supportive. And I honestly think like I wouldn't have maybe gotten here without her, like to this role. She just offered really good advice and it was a really awesome opportunity. And I hope that maybe next year after I've, been in this role for 2 years, I can become a mentor to someone else in HR.
Wow, congratulations. That's impressive. Like only one of two in the whole company.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, HR
Wow.
isn't super huge, so
But
but
still,
it's
uh,
yeah.
um, I'm going to ask this last question, and I'm
Yeah.
paying attention to the time because I know you've got this other meeting coming up. Just anything briefly you want to say about like what you did to make yourself promotion worthy? You sort of, I
Mhm.
kind of heard you allude to it, but could you just say specifically what you did, what you're intentional?
Yeah, I mean, I think on my resume, I definitely really tried to highlight the skills that can be transferable from what I was doing in politics to HR. So I really took some time to like research, you know, what what are good qualities in HR, communication, responsiveness, organization, like all things that are pretty general in any job. Um, Working in, a database, being people facing, like those are all things that I was doing that was kind of like the foundation of HR. So, definitely promoting myself in that way. Um, I think just having a positive attitude and being really willing to learn and eager to learn and really wanting to help people. Those are my kind of selling points, I think, when I interviewed. And I mean, everything else can be learned. So, I think once you have a good foundation for the career switch, the actual intricacies of the job can be learned. So for me,
And,
that was, yeah.
and on the job,
Hmm.
it sounded like you were very proactive in terms of asking what, how can I learn and grow? What are the areas that you
Hmm.
want me to grow in, et cetera? Is that true?
Yes. Yep. And I really tried to like, I think the most important thing is to be the best at your job. So like that's the first step. So like for me it was how am I going to be the best in this job and master it. And then it was starting to think about what am I going to do next in Lonza and like how can I get there? Because it's hard to think about the future when you're still learning, what you're currently doing. So that for me I think was definitely important. And so, I started having the conversations, about a year after I had started, or after I had started, the original HR advisor position and had done a good job and was ready to explore the next opportunity.
And so you say you started to have the conversation. Did you would ask, how do
Hmm.
I need to develop to go to the next step? Like,
Yep.
was it that
Yep. And I just
clear direct?
explained, to the HR leadership on site, like, this is what I want. How can I get there? And yeah, and then they helped support me through an HR certification process. I'm thinking about going to get my master's in HR. So yeah, it's been a great journey, and I'm just excited for the future.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. You packed a lot in a short amount of time.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's always great to talk. So if anybody, needs some advice or wants to connect, you can certainly send them my way.
Thank you.